I'm joined by Harrisburg Fire Chief Brian Enterline. So again, thank you for being here. And I am here to address a topic that should concern every resident of Pennsylvania, and that is making sure that our brave firefighters have the resources they need to save lives and protect property and keep themselves safe as well. And one of the reasons why it's going to be important to keep in mind throughout my remarks is that this is referring to both the professional and the volunteer fire services. And again, really appreciative of the chief being here, especially on very limited sleep, because I think most of you are aware he had a very busy night last night. Benjamin Franklin founded the first volunteer fire company here in Pennsylvania in 1736. The vast majority of firefighters in Pennsylvania are volunteers. And Pennsylvania has the largest number of volunteer fire companies in the United States. Firefighting is not only very dangerous, it is enormously expensive. Basic firefighting gear can cost $3,000. A breathing apparatus can cost as much as $5,000. And the tires on the fire trucks, for example, can be tens of thousands of dollars, and a new truck will be in the range of close to $500,000 at times. To help with the high cost of providing fire protection, my department was assigned to distribute tens of millions of dollars in state aid to volunteer firefighter relief associations known as VFRAs. By law, relief associations exist to help volunteer fire companies and fire departments buy needed equipment, pay for training and insurance, and pay death benefits. The associations are legally separate from the fire departments they support. They must keep separate records and may not mix funds. In addition to distributing state aid, my office audits relief associations to ensure they are spending state funding as the law prescribes. And I'm talking about a significant amount of funding. Last year alone, my department awarded $55.1 million in state aid to volunteer fire relief associations across Pennsylvania. The state law that created relief associations dates back to 1968 and has been updated only twice since then. The law simply stated, the law has not kept pace with changing times, and in my view, puts too many restrictions on how relief associations can spend the state aid they receive. For example, some fire companies use a combination of paid and volunteer firefighters. Under current law, relief association funding may only be used to pay for equipment and benefits for volunteers, not paid firefighters, even if they're going on a mission or a job jointly. And that happens in many of these departments quite routinely. Is that correct, Chief?
Correct.
In a number of audits, my team has found that some relief associations are struggling to follow the letter of the law as it is written. They try to do the right thing, but end up doing it in the wrong way. And again, the important thing to keep in mind here is we have to do our job as auditors to make sure the law is followed. But this law is so out of date that it needs to be updated, not because it makes it any easier or harder for my auditors. That, at some level, is just one piece of making sure that taxpayer money is spent correctly. The most important thing is making sure the law is updated so our brave firefighters, both professional and volunteer, can do an even better job of protecting our communities across the Commonwealth. As many VFRA officials will likely tell you, the restrictions in the law can make it difficult for them to spend their state aid in the way that meets the needs of local firefighters and their community. This may leave a relief association flush with cash. At the same time, the fire department it supports is struggling even to make ends meet. You think, how could that be possible? And I know that there are some, and I know Harrisburg in particular has been talked about before, where there are millions of dollars sometimes in the bank account of the relief association, but then at the same time, the mayor and the city council are unable to work with the fire department to sometimes spend money on needed items because it doesn't comply with the law. In the last few years, my team has identified 59 relief associations with fund balances of $1 million or higher. So today, I'm urging the General Assembly to update the law, to update the funding formula used to distribute the state aid, and perhaps even more importantly, give relief associations greater flexibility to meet local needs while making sure that each dollar can be used to help firefighters save lives and protect their communities. And also, let me be very clear about this. Fire departments still need our support, even if their relief association may have a cash reserve. As we saw last night in Harrisburg, the job firefighters have to do is critical to saving lives and protecting further damage to the community. Firefighters spend a lot of time raising funds to pay for equipment and other expenses that state aid does not cover. So when you're driving by, sometimes there's a grocery store parking lot, and you'll see firefighters there selling their chicken dinners and that type of thing. That's usually because they can't use the state aid to pay for what they need. And they're giving up their Saturdays to sell chicken dinners to basically try to make sure that they're protecting their communities. Our volunteer firefighters perform vital services that save taxpayers billions of dollars. Please be generous when supporting your local volunteer fire department and consider also becoming a volunteer. Just as firefighters need our support, they need legislators to take action. And updating this law will allow greater flexibility for money that's already in many of these accounts. That greater flexibility will lead to greater support for our fire departments to make the critical investments they need to better protect our communities. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Enterline for some brief remarks, and then we'll both be happy to take questions on this topic. Chief?
Thank you. Thank you. I think the two things that the Auditor General really touched on, flexibility and an archaic law. The citizens of our Commonwealth depend daily, as we saw last night in Harrisburg, on the fire services across this Commonwealth. Many of those folks are volunteers. One of the situations that's facing our emergency services across the Commonwealth in both large and small municipalities is a dwindling number of volunteers. 300 and some thousand in the 1970s to just over 35,000 by estimate in 2019. That's a significant decrease. And what I can tell you is the job of a firefighter has not gotten any easier, and our workload has not gotten any lighter in that 40 years of time span where those numbers have dwindled. When we look at that, these municipalities that are now starting to rely on career fire departments, such as Harrisburg, now we've been a career department for many decades, but larger townships that are now at a precipice, they don't have enough of volunteers to protect their constituents, and they have to hire firefighters to come in and do that on maybe a daily basis, Monday to Friday, or maybe a 24-hour rotation. The funds set aside to protect the citizens from the VFRAs is not permitted to assist them in protecting their constituents. So we have a pot of money that sits there, and as the Auditor General said, we have 59 relief associations with over $1 million in them. That's $59 million plus that's sitting there that can't serve the citizens of this Commonwealth because of the archaic law that was written in 1968. Technologies have changed, and when we look at the equipment list, one of the things that has been talked about a lot and we see all the time on the news are drones. Drones are currently not permitted as an allowable expenditure under the VFRA. However, when we look at the safety and security of both the public and our firefighters, they are a very necessary emergency service component, which is being deployed across the country. But here in Pennsylvania, those flush relief associations that have money to be able to buy this technology aren't permitted to do it because it's not laid out in the letter of the law. So we would like to get the legislature on board to help us help the communities and really give this money back to where it belongs, and that's protecting our firefighters and our taxpayers, whether you're career or volunteer, and give them the toolboxes that they need to continue to protect our citizens.
Thank you, Chief.